Hey everyone, I'm Jonah,
And I'm Connor.
and welcome back to Rank and File Sports. Can Jalen Daniels finally break through and have that season that everyone was expecting last year? The Jayhawks were very disappointing 5-7 after a lot of people were projecting them near the top of the Big 12 standings. Maybe this is the year they can finally put it all together and make a surprising push towards the top of the standings. Looking at the schedule, you got a week 0 game, although it is against Fresno State, so it shouldn't be too difficult. But other than that, tricky matchups on the road with Missouri and Texas Tech, as well as Iowa State later in the season, and the Sunflower rivalry matchup with Kansas State. You got a home or 7 home games and 5 away games. Schedule difficulty only a 2.5 out of 10.
Starting the season off, week 0 against Fresno State. Fresno State obviously was a somewhat competitive team last year and is, I believe, getting some good transfer portal acquisitions. But Kansas, if Jalen Daniels plays to the level that everyone was expecting of him last year, and it's this team in general can play to that level, should be no problem here, giving him a 95% chance in that game. Then they will host Wagner. Don't really know anything about Wagner. 100% chance for the Jayhawks in this one. Then a very interesting early road test against the Missouri Tigers. I don't know what to think about this one just because Missouri is losing both Brady Cook and Luther Burden, who are two of their key players on the offense. They're bringing in, I forget what his name is, but it's the Penn State backup who played against Wisconsin last season. Actually looked pretty good to be their quarterback next year. This should be a fairly interesting game. Obviously, Mizzou's kind of retooling after the departure of those key players, and Kansas is looking to rebound after that disappointing season with essentially very similar roster. So this one could go either way, but since it is at Mizzou and SEC environments are very hard to play in, we're going to slightly favor the Tigers in this one, giving the Jayhawks a 45% chance to get a win on the road going into their first bye week.
Yeah, after that, you got West Virginia at home, starting off Big 12 play with honestly not a terrible matchup. This West Virginia team, not too great last season, and this year probably going to be more of the same. I think Kansas should be favored here, about a 75% chance for a Jayhawks win. Then you got Cincinnati, another team that wasn't too great last year. I think they probably have a better chance of improving this season than West Virginia. But given that it's early in Big 12 play, I think Kansas is going to be the better team here and again should have about a 75% chance of a win. And then another team really similar to those first two with UCF. This time you're going on the road. It'll be a little bit more difficult, but overall, I still really like Kansas in this one. So give me the Jayhawks at about a 70% chance of a win. And then the first really tricky Big 12 matchup with Texas Tech on the road. We're really high on the Red Raiders as well. We think this is going to be a really solid team, and I think they're going to give Kansas a lot of trouble with the home field advantage. Texas Tech's going to be favored in this one, about 40% chance for a Kansas road win.
Coming out of that second bye, they'll be hosting Kansas State, which is going to be a very interesting matchup. Obviously, it's a rivalry game, and Kansas State is one of the top teams in the Big 12. Big story for Kansas State is that Avery Johnson is back at quarterback after another very solid season, looking to be maybe a dark horse contender for that Heisman Trophy. Kansas State is able to make the college football playoff and be one of those competitive teams. This just hinges on the fact that Jalen Daniels can be that guy as well. He can be the dangerous quarterback, dual threat quarterback that we're hoping he is, but it's just a matter of does that come out? And I think they have a real chance in this one because Kansas was able to beat Shadur Sanders and Travis Hunter in Colorado last year at home. And I do think in a rivalry game like this, Kansas has a legitimate chance in this one. We're going to slightly favor Kansas State in this one just because Avery Johnson has that continued success and that consistent success. But a 45% chance for the Jayhawks is very solid. And I could easily see them winning this game, especially after that tough Texas Tech game and a bye week right before it. After that, they'll be at home again, facing off against Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State had a very disappointing season last year. Obviously, Ollie Gordon was supposed to be one of the best running backs in all of college football and severely underperformed. I don't think they're going to get a whole lot better. Maybe they can put up a little bit of a fight. Maybe there's a slight lull after that Kansas State game, but overall, Jayhawks should be favored in this one, giving them an 80% chance. Then they'll go on the road to face Arizona. Arizona obviously losing Tetaroa McMillan at wide receiver, but still retaining Noah Fafita at quarterback. This will be another interesting battle between two returning quarterbacks. But Arizona also struggled a lot last season, especially in Big 12 play. And I think in this one, Kansas is going to be a slightly better team. Should be an interesting game between these two, like middle of the pack Big 12 teams next season. But I like the Jayhawks in this one to get it done on the road, giving them a 65% chance to get the win going into their final bye week.
Then they're going on the road to face Iowa State. The Cyclones made the Big 12 championship last season before getting blown out to an eventual quarterfinal team in the Arizona State Sun Devils. This is a really, really good Iowa State team, and I think they're going to be really solid again next season. The Big 12 is always the toughest conference to predict just because most of the teams end up being really similar talent-wise, and we end up seeing a lot of, multi-loss teams towards the top of the conference. Kansas is going to have a shot to be up there, but this Iowa State team I think is just a little bit better, and they should be able to get the win over Kansas, but still 35% chance for the Jayhawks. And then the last game of the season against Utah, the Utes, one of the most disappointing teams last year as well. I believe they lost 8 straight games to end the season. So, I mean, I it's really tough to predict Utah next year because you want to think they're going to improve because they've been so solid previous years. But with how terrible last season was, we have to give the credit to Kansas right now and give them an advantage at home here. About a 70% chance for a Kansas win to end the season.
Looking at the season as a whole, Kansas does have the potential to be around maybe that like 9-win threshold if they're able to compete at that level like we're expecting them to compete at, what we expected last year with Jalen Daniels as their quarterback. It is fully dependent on how he plays, though. If he plays to like a mediocre level that we saw last year, it's going to be the same story as last season. But if he's able to elevate his game and develop just slightly, play like he did against Colorado last season, this Kansas team is going to be dangerous. And much like a lot of these other teams in the Big 12, it's going to be a dogfight regardless of who you're playing. So I can see this Kansas team winning 7 or 8 games. Obviously, the tricky ones are those road trips to Texas Tech and Iowa State, and then also hosting Kansas State. But this is this could be a very solid team.
Yeah, I think that this Jayhawks team has a lot of upset potential. I think they're going to pull one off this year. Not sure which one yet, but at the same time, probably going to be upset by a team. So I'm with you around 7-5 to 8-4. I think it'll all balance out in the end, and they'll end up winning about as many games as we'd expect them to. So speaking of last year, the Jayhawks did go 5-7. Our projection for this year is 7.95 wins, so almost getting to 8 right there. However, we are going to predict 7-5 for Kansas. I think there will be a couple games they're maybe not expecting to lose that they're going to end up dropping. But don't be surprised if this Kansas team pulls off an upset. If they pull off two, maybe they'll finish 8-4. The Vegas over/under is sitting at 7.5, and it is favored for the over, which honestly makes me feel a little bit better about our 7-5 prediction, just because a lot of people were really high on Kansas last year. They ended up disappointing. So going against the crowd seems to be the smart move. Anyways, thank you so much for watching the video. Please make sure to like and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one.